The room was dark, illuminated only by the soft glow of a holographic projection hovering above the table. The assassins sat in silence, their eyes narrowed and focused, every one of them contemplating the contract that had just been laid out before them. The flickering light cast sharp shadows on their faces, creating an eerie tension that seemed to hang in the air like a storm waiting to break. Zara, once a warlord who had torn through entire armies with ruthless precision, took the first step toward the table. Her sharp gaze flicked between the others before settling on the contractor standing at the far end of the room. She was tall, her dark skin marked with the faint scars of battles long past, and her presence commanded respect. The faintest twitch of her lips was the only sign of hesitation. Her fingers brushed lightly over the contract, and she signed it with a deliberate, almost mechanical motion. "Human," the contractor said, his voice cool, yet laced with something darker, something unsaid. "Your target is human." A murmur spread among the assassins, their interest piqued. It was a strange thing to hear, humans were rarely the target. Too weak. Too predictable. Rigger, the cyborg, leaned forward, his glowing blue eyes scanning the contract's contents as if his augmented vision could decipher more than what was printed. He adjusted the neural interface embedded in his skull, a dull whine of machinery filling the silence before he spoke. "Human?" His voice was tinged with skepticism, even though his tone remained cold and detached. "This is a joke, right? Why would anyone want a mere human dead?" The contractor's lips twisted in what could almost be mistaken for amusement. "This human is different. There's more at stake than you know." Zara's hand clenched around her pen. She didn't like being led into the unknown. After years of leading armies, she had learned that secrets bred danger. And danger was something she had no intention of courting without knowing all the details. Jiva, the quietest of the group, remained unmoved. Her sharp, calculating eyes never strayed from the contractor, though her attention was split between the conversation and the surroundings. She was a master of stealth, her movements so fluid that she often seemed to melt into shadows. Her short, silver hair caught the light as she tilted her head slightly. There was no question in her mind. "I'm in," she said simply, her voice smooth, almost like silk. "Who is he?" The contractor extended his hand to the projection, and the image of a human appeared, a simple man with brown hair and soft eyes. He seemed unremarkable at first glance. His features were ordinary, nothing about him suggested he was anything special. "His name is Ethan Walker," the contractor continued, his voice taking on a darker edge. "And he is not what he appears." Rigger's augmented eyes flickered as he scanned the holographic image. "His profile doesn't match the value you're putting on him." "Who is he really?" The contractor took a deep breath, as if preparing to disclose something monumental. "Ethan Walker has information that could destroy the foundations of the Galactic Order. And he doesn't even know it." Zara's brow furrowed. "What kind of information?" The contractor smiled, but it wasn't a pleasant expression. "The kind that could shift the balance of power in this universe. And the kind that many people would kill for." There it was, the real hook. Power. The very thing every assassin in the room had fought for at one point or another. The thirst for power, control, and domination over their surroundings. But Zara's instincts told her something wasn't right. Rigger's mechanical eye flickered once more as he processed the new information. "You're playing us," he said, his tone suspicious. "You're not telling us everything." Jiva tilted her head, but the cold smile that spread across her face suggested she was intrigued by the mystery. "I don't care about the why. I care about the job." Zara turned to face her, her voice sharp. "You should care. There's something off about this. Something that doesn't add up." "She's right," Rigger said, his voice unusually grave. "We're being fed crumbs while they withhold the feast." The contractor finally stepped forward, his face coming into the light. His features were hidden beneath the cloak of shadows, but his eyes gleamed with something ancient, something far older than any of them had ever encountered. "You will receive what you're owed, but first, you need to understand that this mission is not what it seems. Ethan Walker is not just a man. He is the key to something greater. And those who control him will control everything. Zara's eyes narrowed, her instincts kicking into high gear. She had seen too many wars sparked by miscalculations. Too many times, she had watched empires crumble because a single mistake was made. And now, it seemed like they were all on the verge of making one. But the allure of the unknown was too strong. She gripped the pen in her hand and signed the contract. Her decision was made. But the pit in her stomach grew deeper. She wasn't sure if she was walking into a trap or if she was about to set one of her own. As the others followed suit, signing their names in silent agreement, the contractor's voice rang out one final time, sharp and foreboding. Good. The mission starts immediately. The human is not what you think. Prepare yourselves. Zara could feel the weight of the contract now, pressing down on her shoulders. She had signed on for blood, but she hadn't anticipated what this mission would bring. And she was certain that the hunt for Ethan Walker would be far more dangerous than any of them realized. The assassins stood in silence for a long moment, the air thick with anticipation. It was only then that Zara allowed herself to glance at the holographic image once more. The human looked back at her, his brown eyes wide, unknowingly staring into the abyss that was about to unfold. And Zara realized, this wasn't just a hunt. This was the beginning of something far bigger than they all could have imagined. The team arrived on the quiet planet of Callus for under the cover of dusk, their transport craft cutting through the atmosphere with the precision of a blade slicing through silk. The air outside was thick with humidity, a stark contrast to the cold, sterile ship they had just disembarked from. Zara was the first to step off the craft, her boots sinking slightly into the soft soil as she surveyed the landscape. A faint buzz of insect life filled the air, an unsettling reminder that, despite their mission, they weren't in control of everything here. This place smells like a graveyard, Rigger muttered, his voice an eerie echo in the silence. His glowing blue eyes scanned the terrain, his cybernetic enhancements whirring beneath his skin as he adjusted his sensors. Zara glanced over at him. Keep your guard up, she said, her voice low. There's something off about this whole setup. Jiva, the quietest of the group, stood at the rear, her fingers lightly brushing against the hilt of the blade hidden beneath her cloak. Her silver hair, almost white in the dim light, reflected the flickering shadows from the ship's landing lights. She didn't speak, but her gaze swept across the surrounding trees, her sharp eyes constantly searching, always alert. They had been given little information about Ethan Walker beyond his name and the contractor's cryptic warning. He's not just any human, the contractor had said. He's the key. The words had echoed in Zara's mind ever since. What kind of key could a simple human be? The team moved quickly, traveling through dense undergrowth toward the small village where their target was last seen. The settlement, if it could be called that, looked eerily abandoned. Buildings, once clearly built to last, stood in various states of decay. The walls were cracked, the roofs caved in by years of neglect. It felt like walking through a forgotten world, one that had been left to wither away. Rigger raised his hand, signaling for them to stop. The team huddled behind a crumbling stone structure, peering around its edge. In the center of the village stood a small, makeshift shrine, the symbols on it unfamiliar. The air felt charged, as though the ground itself had absorbed the tension of countless years. Zara furrowed her brow. That doesn't look like a shrine to any god I know. Jiva's eyes narrowed, the silver gleam of her irises catching the light. It's not. It's a symbol of some kind of sect, maybe a cult. They revere him, don't they? Her voice was quiet, but sharp, as if she were seeing something no one else could. Zara nodded, her hand instinctively resting on the hilt of her blaster. We need to find out who these people are, and fast. The trio moved cautiously through the village, their steps muffled by the thick moss that covered the ground. As they approached the center of the village, they spotted figures, humanoid, draped in dark robes, standing near the shrine, murmuring in a language none of them recognized. Stay hidden, Zara whispered, her voice firm. We get close, we find out what we're dealing with. Rigger, his mechanical limbs silent as ever, crouched beside a broken wall, his enhanced vision zooming in on the figures. I see no weapons, he said, scanning them. But they are watching over something. It's not just a shrine. Jiva's eyes flicked to the right, where a flicker of movement caught her attention. We're not alone. A figure in a tattered robe stepped out from behind one of the derelict buildings. His face was obscured by a hood, but his posture was stiff and deliberate. He was watching them, though his eyes never met theirs directly. Instead, his gaze lingered on something beyond them, as though something else held his attention. Zara's hand hovered over her weapon, but she didn't make a move. They weren't here to cause a scene. Not yet. He's looking at us, Rigger observed quietly, his voice betraying no emotion. What does he know? Before Zara could answer, a low voice from the figure startled her. You're looking for Ethan Walker. The words hung in the air like a challenge. The figure didn't move, didn't flinch. He simply waited, as though expecting them to respond. Zara stepped forward, eyes narrowed. We are. And you are? The figure didn't answer right away, but his lips parted slightly. He is no ordinary man. He carries with him the weight of the galaxy's future. The statement was so strange that for a moment, no one spoke. Then Jiva, ever the pragmatist, moved first. Enough riddles. Tell us where he is. The man's head tilted slightly, as though he were considering Jiva's words carefully. He's not here, he said finally. But he is close. Closer than you think. The tension between them thickened. Zara took a step forward, her voice steely. You're telling us the truth? He nodded slowly, eyes not meeting hers directly. He does not know what he is. But you will learn soon enough. Zara's patience was wearing thin, but before she could press further, the man spoke again. You have come to kill him, yes? Zara paused. We're here for the job, not for questions. You are making a grave mistake. The words hit her like a physical blow, but she didn't flinch. The man's eyes finally met hers, and for the first time, she saw something in them. It wasn't fear or anger, no, it was something far deeper. Something almost knowing. I don't trust this, Rigger said quietly, stepping closer. His mechanical eye narrowed as he scanned the figure. Zara felt a chill crawl up her spine. There was something wrong with all of this. The man, the shrine, the unsettling presence of the cult, it wasn't adding up. There was more to Ethan Walker than they'd been told. More than even the contractor had let on. Jiva's voice broke the silence. We need to find him. Now. Zara nodded. Stay sharp. Something tells me we're walking into the unknown. As they turned to move forward, the figure called out one last time. The human you seek is not your enemy. But if you follow this path, you may become his. The words echoed in Zara's mind as they disappeared into the ruins, the weight of them sinking in. The target was no longer just a man. Ethan Walker was a key to something bigger. A key to a galaxy they hadn't even begun to understand. And that terrified her. The air in the dense jungle of Callus 4 had thickened since the team's arrival, the humidity pressing down like a weight against their skin. Zara's brow furrowed as she led the group deeper into the forest, the low rumble of distant thunder echoing in the distance. The leaves above them swayed, a green sea disturbed by the faintest wind. But it wasn't the jungle that unnerved her, it was the constant feeling of being watched. Each step they took felt like it was being measured, analyzed. She could almost feel eyes tracking them, hidden in the shadows. But there was nothing. No sign of any pursuers, no movement in the underbrush. Rigger's mechanical leg made a soft whirring noise as he adjusted his stance, his enhanced vision scanning their surroundings for any sign of danger. His glowing blue eye flickered as he processed data faster than the others could blink. Zara, Rigger said, his voice flat but tinged with uncertainty, we're getting closer. I can sense it. His signature is, well, it's not what I expected. Zara turned to face him. What does that mean? Rigger's synthetic eye blinked once. It means the human, Ethan Walker, has something in his genetic structure that's alien. Not human. Zara's pulse quickened. They had come here to kill a man. A man who was supposed to be nothing more than a simple target. Yet, with every piece of information, they uncovered more contradictions. Rigger had already told her that Walker's DNA was unlike anything he had ever analyzed before. Something was off, and Zara had a gnawing suspicion that the more they uncovered, the less they understood. "Where exactly are we heading?" Zara asked, her gaze sharpening. Jiva, who had been silent, glanced at the map on her handheld device. "The village," she said. "We should be close by now." "But there's no sign of Ethan." Zara's eyes darted around the jungle. She could feel it now, a presence, an energy that thrummed beneath her skin. It wasn't just the jungle's oppressive atmosphere. There was something unnatural here. Something she couldn't explain. Then, a flash of movement caught her attention. Not from the jungle, but from up ahead. In the distance, past the trees, there was a glimmer of light, a faint, unnatural glow that pierced through the foliage. It was strange, as though a light source was bent, twisted by an invisible force. Zara motioned for the others to follow. They moved swiftly, parting the underbrush with calculated precision. The glow grew brighter as they neared it, pulsating rhythmically, like a heartbeat. It felt wrong. When they broke through the final line of trees, they found themselves standing at the edge of a clearing. The glow was now blinding, but it wasn't from a conventional light source. In the center of the clearing stood a massive stone pillar, covered in ancient markings. The light emanated from within the stone, as though something alive was pulsing within it. Ethan Walker stood there, hands raised, eyes closed, as if in communion with the stone. His figure was bathed in the unnatural light, the energy wrapping around him like a living thing. He didn't move, his posture still and focused. Zara's breath caught in her throat. This was not the man they had been sent to kill. This was something else. "Ethan Walker," she called, stepping forward cautiously. The moment her voice broke the silence, Ethan's eyes snapped open. There was something in his gaze, something ancient, something unnerving. His expression was not one of fear, nor of confusion, but of quiet understanding. As if he knew exactly who they were. He turned his head slowly, and for the first time, his voice reached them. It wasn't loud, but it was clear, every word filled with purpose. "I've been waiting for you." Zara's heart skipped. She wasn't sure if she was more surprised by the words or the calmness in his tone. "You're human?" she asked, her voice betraying the doubt swirling in her chest. Ethan smiled, though there was no humor in his expression. "Human, yes. But not entirely what you think." Jiva stepped forward, her body tense. "You're not what we were told." "Who are you?" Ethan's smile faded, and he lowered his hands. The light around him dimmed slightly, but the strange energy still lingered. "I don't know how much you've been told, but I'm no ordinary human. I've never been." Rigger's voice was low but filled with intensity. "What are you, then?" Ethan's gaze shifted toward him, his eyes locking onto Rigger with a piercing intensity. "I am the product of a different kind of evolution. The human race doesn't know its true potential. But I've glimpsed it. And soon, the rest of you will too." Zara took a step back, her hand instinctively reaching for her weapon. "This is a setup, isn't it? You're not just a target. You're a threat." Ethan looked at her, his expression softening for the first time. "No, I'm not your enemy. I was never meant to be a target. But the galaxy has a way of turning everything into a weapon. Even me." Zara couldn't shake the unease tightening in her chest. His words sounded sincere. But there was an underlying current of something else. The sensation in the air, the pulse of energy, was unmistakable. Before she could respond, the ground beneath them trembled. A deep rumble vibrated through the soil, and the ancient stone pillar suddenly cracked open, revealing a glowing orb within. The energy pulsing from the orb was overwhelming, surging out like a tidal wave. "This is why I've been waiting for you," Ethan said, his voice barely audible above the growing roar of power. "You were sent to stop me, but I have no choice. The galaxy needs this power." It's the only way to save it. The orb's light intensified, blinding them all. Zara stumbled back, shielding her eyes from the overwhelming glow. She could feel it, the energy coursing through her body, tugging at the edges of her consciousness. It was as though the very fabric of reality was bending in this place. "Zara, we need to get out of here," Rigger shouted, his voice filled with urgency. But Zara couldn't tear her eyes away from Ethan. The truth, whatever it was unfolding before them, and it was more than any of them had ever imagined. "I have to stop it," Zara whispered to herself. But as the light enveloped them, she realized that stopping it might be the last thing she could ever do. Zara staggered, her hand clutching the hilt of her weapon, as the intense light from the orb began to overwhelm her senses. The air was thick with energy, almost alive, as if the very fabric of space had bent and twisted around them. The pulsing glow seemed to seep into her skin, her thoughts clouded by an unseen force. Beneath her boots, the earth trembled, and an overwhelming pressure built in the pit of her stomach. "Rigger, Jiva," she yelled, her voice barely audible over the deafening hum of power. "We need to move." Rigger's voice crackled over the comms, distorted by static. "I can't move, this energy, it's interfering with my systems." Jiva's silhouette emerged from the blinding light, her normally calm demeanor now twisted with anxiety. "Zara, something's wrong. This isn't just power, it's a call. It's reaching inside of me." Her voice was strained, as though each word took an effort to push out. Zara's pulse raced. She had seen countless threats in her time, but nothing like this. They had come here expecting a simple kill, to eliminate a target that seemed insignificant at first, only to uncover something far beyond their comprehension. Now, the power in the air felt tangible, like a living force clawing at her from within. Ethan Walker stood at the center of the chaos, his eyes glowing with the same ethereal light that poured from the orb. His expression was serene, unbothered by the growing turbulence around them. It was as if he was meant to be here, as if he belonged to this unnatural energy. "I don't want to fight you, Zara," Ethan's voice reached her again, calm but resolute. "But this isn't a choice I can make alone. The power I've unlocked is something far greater than any of us. The galaxy needs it, and I need you to understand why." Zara's heart pounded in her chest as she took another step forward. She had always trusted her instincts, and everything inside her screamed to run, to leave this madness behind. But she couldn't. There was something in Ethan's words, something that made her pause. A force beyond reason, beyond logic, was now controlling them all. "Stop it," she shouted, her voice filled with frustration. "You're risking everything, this isn't just about you." Ethan's gaze softened, and for a fleeting moment, Zara saw the man she had once thought of as a simple target. But in that instant, the power around him intensified, and the energy surged violently, as if answering a command only Ethan could give. The ground split beneath them, and Zara was thrown to the ground, her body slamming against the earth with brutal force. Pain shot through her limbs as the world around her seemed to implode. Her vision blurred, but she could hear Rigger's voice in her earpiece, struggling to regain control over his systems. "Zara, this is it." Rigger's voice was desperate. "We can't stop this, we need to leave before it's too late." Zara pushed herself to her knees, struggling against the pressure of the energy pressing down on her. Her mind raced. The mission had always been clear: kill Ethan Walker and collect the reward. But this was different. This wasn't just about money or power, it was about something far deeper, something she couldn't quite grasp. She looked up, her gaze meeting Ethan's once more. The serene expression on his face had hardened, his focus unyielding as the light around him blazed like a supernova. But there was a trace of something else in his eyes, regret, maybe. "You don't understand," Ethan said, his voice carrying over the chaos. "I was chosen for this. The galaxy has been in a state of decay for centuries, but this is how we begin to fix it." Zara's breath hitched. "You think this is the answer?" she spat, barely able to stand against the pressure. "You're destroying everything we've worked for. You're no different than the ones we fight against." A flicker of pain flashed across Ethan's face, and for a moment, The power around him faltered. Zara's heart skipped a beat. Was this a chance? Could she reach him? I didn't ask for this, Zara, Ethan whispered, his voice carrying a heavy burden. But I have no choice now. The power I've unlocked is not something I can contain. It's too dangerous to be left unchecked. The orb at the center of the clearing suddenly pulsed, its light expanding outward in a wave of overwhelming force. The ground cracked further, as if the very foundation of the planet was being torn apart. The jungle around them began to wither, the trees shaking as though in fear, their leaves falling to the ground in a cascade of dust. Rigger's voice broke through the chaos, now clearer as his systems began to reboot. Zara, I'm losing control of my systems. We're out of time. She looked back at her team, both of them fighting against the energy that threatened to tear them apart. The choice was clear now. Ethan was more than they could fight. More than they could understand. The energy from the orb was too powerful, and the consequences of trying to stop him were too dire. But she couldn't let this happen. Not without knowing more. Without understanding the truth. Zara took a deep breath, her mind racing. She turned back to Ethan, her voice now steady, despite the fear pulsing through her veins. What is this power? Why me? Ethan's eyes flickered with a strange intensity. Because, Zara, you are the key to controlling it. You and I are connected in ways you don't yet realize. Her heart skipped. What do you mean? Ethan stepped forward, the orb's light reflecting in his eyes. You were always meant to be part of this. Together, we can unlock a new era for the galaxy. We can reshape everything, create a future free from the chaos that has ruled for centuries. Zara's mind reeled. She wasn't ready to accept this. She wasn't ready to understand what he was saying. But the truth was beginning to dawn on her, and the weight of it threatened to crush her. Zara, Rigger's voice came through again, but it was distant, weak. This isn't just about survival anymore. It's about what comes next. The decision had never been so clear, or so terrifying. The galaxy's future, their futures, lay in Ethan's hands, and Zara could either fight him or join him. The world trembled beneath her feet, and as the light from the orb engulfed them all, Zara knew this was only the beginning. The question was, which side would she be on when it all unfolded?